Hey guys, and welcome to another Interstellar Modeler as I continue my build of the Galactica Colonial Viper. Let me just show you where I'm at right now. I'm in the process of piecing the model together. This, of course, is the front section of the Viper. I found this a little bit challenging to put together, mainly because of this one piece I'll show you here on the instructions. There is this one piece here that is supposed to be for the front landing gear, and it's like a little card. It has to slide into these slots here and here, as well as on slots on this side. And I didn't quite get it right the first time. I had to end up prying the model apart again and start over. So something you might just want to practice a couple times before you piece the two halves together. I practiced because of the cockpit. I didn't even think about this front section here, but just keep that in mind. Once you get the two halves together, the other thing you might want to have handy are these clamps. Clamps are great for applying constant pressure, and that way your seams can be as tight as possible. And one other quick note I wanted to make is about the colors that I'm using. So for the main color, I'm using Tester's Light Gray. If you've seen my other videos, that's one of my favorite colors to use on ships like this. I used to use Camouflage Gray quite a bit, but I found that tend to be more of like an almond shade, so this one to me is more of a truer gray. For the darker gray accents, I am using Tamiya's light gunmetal, and this is probably the third Viper that I've built, and in the past I've used Tester's Steel Metallizer for the dark gray accents, but this time I decided to do something a little different. I've been very happy with the choice because it's a little shinier. To me, I find these types of paints a little easier to handle versus the metallizers. So I'm using it, of course, for this front nose piece, and of course the engines at the back here. Let me take a second to talk about the laser turrets. They've been painted with two different colors. The rear end of the turret here was painted with the same colors I used on the covering for the engines, and that was Tamiya's light gunmetal. And then the front part of the turret here was painted with Tester's Metallizer gunmetal. And so one's a little darker than the other, adds a little contrast here, and this was suggested by the instructions. And I think it turns out pretty nice, so something you might want to consider doing as well. Now the front part of the turret, I drilled out a little hole here just to add a little more realism, and this gives me a second just to talk about the importance of using a pin vise. So it might be something for you to get a hold of. This is a very helpful tool to have if you have to drill holes in plastic models. It's a way of doing that without having to use a Dremel, for one thing. A Dremel is a great tool, but if you're trying to drill something small, the friction can cause the plastic to melt. So this is a way to do that without having that happen. So this is something you can get fairly inexpensive. I got this set on eBay. Pretty sure it was under 15 bucks, if not cheaper, and it came with a bunch of different drill bits here of various sizes. So again, it's called a pin vise. Very helpful tool to have. Let me take a second to introduce you to our pilot. This is the figure that comes with the model kit. The colors I used here were Tester's leather for his jacket and his boots and the holster. And I also darkened the color a little bit to apply these dark patches on the shoulders, because if you look at original pictures from the TV series, you'll notice that the jacket had these dark patches. And then for the helmet, I used this color here. It's called Banana Cream from Americana. This is an acrylic paint that you can get at Michael's. I actually bought this for a different project. It just so happened the color was very close to what I was looking for the helmet. So I took it and darkened it up a little bit with the leather color, mixed those together, and thinned it with the Aztec acrylic thinner. And it applied pretty evenly to the helmet. So I was pretty happy with the way that color turned out. Now the fine lines here on the side were applied with a marker rather than a brush. And I used a Micron 05 marker, so unless you're very good with a brush, this gives you a little cleaner look. It's a permanent marker, and it comes with a nice fine tip. It gives you a little bit more control. And things are coming right along here. I've already pieced the model together here now, and I've just finished with the canopy. And to get these lines here, again, I used liquid mask. I know I've talked about this in other videos before. Nice thing about this is it really does a good job at sealing off the edges, so when you're ready to peel it away, you'll get nice clean lines. If you do decide to use this stuff, however, make sure you apply at least 3 coats, and when you do remove the liquid mask, take an X-Acto knife and run along the edges of the windows, and that way when you peel it away, it will peel off fairly smooth. Alright, so here we have the decals applied now. I haven't glued the tail section here just to give me more access as I do the weathering now, and that's what I'm starting to do here. The Viper that you see here in the background is the Viper that I've had in my collection now for a few years. This was the re-released version, and I'm going to use it as a guide to weathering my new Viper here. Now, one thing I wanted to show you is something new that I came across recently, and this is called Tamiya Weathering Master. I was doing a search on the internet about weathering models, and I came across someone who had used this on their model, and it looked really good. So I decided to order one off of eBay, and it wasn't very expensive. And when I got it, it actually reminds me of a makeup kit here. You can see it comes with 3 colors here, white, black, and brown. And this is supposed to represent snow, soot, and rust. And apparently there are other colors you can order as well. Just depends on the type of weathering you want to do. Now included is an applicator that has a spongy side on one tip and then a brush on the other. And what I think this is going to be helpful with are with making windswept detailing like we have here on the Viper. Now you can obviously do this with pastels. I've done that a number of times obviously on many of my models. So there are a couple things that I find sometimes a little challenging with pastels. One is that you go through brushes quite a bit, meaning that you have to dip the brush in your pastels, and sometimes you're rubbing it against sandpaper if you're doing it that way, and the brush gets pretty frayed. So the problem with having a frayed brush is you can't get these pointed type of streaks. It tends to be a bit more diffuse, and it happens fairly quickly with brushes, and so I thought this might be a great way to address that issue. So let me just take a second to show you how this all works. So let's go ahead and use this old X-Wing here, and what I'm going to do now is make a streak from here to here. So I'm going to go ahead and use the black color. Get a good amount on there. And let's just see what happens when we apply this. Alright, and so you can kind of see here these streaks are starting to form. Don't have a very good angle here, but you get the picture here where you just streak backwards like so, and you can see you're getting these lines now. Alright everybody, and here we have the finished model kit. This is the 1/32 scale Moebius Colonial Viper. The model now has been finished and weathered with pastels and the use of that Tamiya weathering system. What I found really nice about that system was that I think it has some advantages over pastels in that you can make certain markings darker quite easily, whereas with the pastels you'd have to brush quite a few applications to get to the right darkness. This was fairly easy to do with that applicator. The other thing that it allows you to do is to make more precise markings, especially with the windswept streaks that you see along the wings here. And I also was able to use it to darken up these corners here along these housings of the engines, and dirty up these cables and all these other areas here as well. Now I did use pastels in combination with this just to give it more shading along the corners, but a lot of these other streaks were produced with the Tamiya system. You just kind of go around the model here. I also decided this time to weather some more of the panels here to bring out some of the panels and take advantage of these heavy scribed lines that they provided on the model kit. So I was pretty happy with the way this turned out as well. So overall I'm very happy with the way this model turned out. Next thing I'm going to do now is turn on some of these lights so I can turn on the LEDs. Alright, one thing I'm very satisfied with is with the way these flickering LEDs are looking here. I'm doing this from the side so you can see the flickering effect. I'm going to go ahead and move around here towards the rear. The video unfortunately kind of washes them out a bit here, but you go from the side you can see that flickering effect a little bit better. So very happy with the way those turned out. And you can see here through the canopy, the cockpit is all lit up here. And let me go ahead and take off the canopy here so that you can get a better view of the interior lighting. So the photo etch kit was well worth it. It again comes with those graphics that really add some nice detailing here to the interior. And you can see all the displays light up quite nicely here, down to those little points of light here that you see along the inside panel. And I've turned off the rest of the lights with the exception of my computer here that's shining in the background, just so you can see how the pilot is illuminated here by his instrumentation. Alright, so I've turned the lights back on here, and one other thing I did want to point out here with the engines, the 1.4mm lights seem bright enough to me here to provide the effect that I was looking for, so I'm very happy about that. And the other thing that I did find helpful, I did decide to spray the clear pieces that come with these engines here with a dull coat, and that added for more light diffusion. And so you can't really see that here on the video, everything gets kind of washed out, but it does look much better with that dull coat in place. And one last thing to mention here briefly is about the stand. I decided to choose the Polar Lights stand, which you can purchase separately. I replaced the solid rod that came with the stand with this brass hollow tube that allowed the wires to feed down to the power source. However, I found out after putting this together that the stand isn't quite steep enough to house the AA battery that powers this, so had I known I probably would have chosen something different. But for now it's doing okay. I eventually probably will replace that. Alright, so that concludes this video. I hope you enjoyed watching this build of the Moebius 132 scale Colonial Viper. As usual, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. And thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. Take care.